Hey guys, and welcome back. Now, earlier in the year, I did a thrifting ASMR vinyl haul video that was extremely popular. So I thought I would do another one today, but this time I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to do not just vinyls, but also some other formats, musical formats. But they're all things that I have hauled in very recently at the local thrift shops. And I should make a note that today it's classical music. Oh, I think I got some dust on my lens there. Yeah, I got some dust on my lens. Anyway, the haul that I'm going to share with you today is just basically classical music. So last time I did 80s kind of pop, synth pop kind of theme. So today it's going to be more classical. So let's start off. So first of all, I'm going to share a few cassettes that I hauled in at the thrift stores. Now, first off, can you see that all right? This is a tape of Gustav Holst, The Planets, London Records. Quite interesting. I thought I'd pick this up primarily, although I do like Holst, of course, primarily for the color of the cassette case. Here is a very lovely blue, and on top of that, if you can see there, the cassette shell itself, it is this very interesting turquoisey color, which I thought was quite interesting. So this one is just a standard cassette tape encoded with a Dolby B noise reduction. I thought that was interesting, primarily for the colors, as I say. So that's the first item in my haul. So secondly, I've got another cassette here. This one is on the Philips label, which, as you know, is a Dutch company record label. Now this one is called España, which includes works by several different composers, including a couple that I really like, Rodrigo and De Falla. Now I should mention that before I get too far into this, that please excuse the pronunciation of these composers. They're basically, my knowledge of classical music is just from reading. I haven't actually heard anyone else pronounce these names, and I do apologize if I'm brutalizing the names. So keep that in mind, please, and do be kind. I'd prefer people wouldn't hate on my pronunciation, so thank you in advance. So back to this one. As I say, it's a selection of different composers. Chabrier, Rodrigo, Falla, Granados, Glinka, Albanese, and Rimsky-Korsakov. Now, I notice reading this right now that now only 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, to my knowledge, are actually Spanish composers. The rest, I suppose these are pieces that were inspired by Spain or Spanish music. Rimsky-Korsakov and Glinka, they're Russian. Chabrier, I assume, is French. So, if you can see, standard black cassette shell there. This tape, however, it is on chromium dioxide, CrO2 tape formula, which is a bit more expensive, or it was a bit more expensive back at the time when they were manufacturing these tapes. As far as I know, it gives a better signal to noise ratio. It's quieter tape. just better sound quality all in all. So it's not that common to see in tapes, pre-recorded tapes, I should say. But classical music, I see it on more frequently than, say, pop or something like that. All right, and also another thing to note, I don't know if you can see that, but the this portion of the cassette case is actually like a brown, not a black, which I think looks quite nice, quite elegant. Okay, so the next one is also a cassette. This is on the Deutsche Grammophon label, a very famous classical label which is still in operation today, and noteworthy for its very, how can I say this? Noteworthy for its kind of individualistic look. They generally, not always, you do see some that are different, but they usually have this kind of square box motif with the composer's name and the name of the piece, with usually some kind of a painting or something in the background. Anyway, this one is Grieg, Peer Gynt. I'm sure you're familiar with that piece, and also some Sibelius, Pelleas, and Melisande. Not sure how you would pronounce that. Directed by, or I should say conducted by Herbert von Karajan, famous German conductor who did a lot of work with Deutsche Grammophon. So as you can see, this is also on a chromium dioxide tape and encoded with Dolby B, I believe, noise reduction. Now, if you look inside, I always loved the look of Deutsche Grammophon, the records as well as the tapes. I haven't seen a lot of the tapes, but it just looks lovely. The black with the yellow, the contrast there, just exquisite, I would say. And this is made in Germany, the tape. All right, so that's the final cassette in my haul. So let's move on to a different format. Okay, so the next format that I'm going to be looking at is one that is less than on trend, I would say, compact disc. Now, I know that people aren't really buying these nowadays, kind of looked down upon, frowned upon. I'd say probably the trendiest format at the moment is the cassette, actually, followed by the vinyl record, which has had quite a comeback in the last 10 years, starting a bit longer than that, but really became trendy about 10 years ago. But cassettes are kind of taking over, maybe the spotlight amongst the elite in terms of trendiness, I would say. Now, cassette, or compact disc, not trendy at all. You can't even give these away. However, I did decide to buy these just for cost, quite inexpensive, even at a thrift store compared to the other formats. And I don't really want to discriminate against certain formats just because it may not be as trendy as some other ones. So I decide I keep an open mind. I give the other formats a chance. And I do find some CDs to be quite interesting as a physical object. So first off, let's take a look at this one. This is Stravinsky, Petrushka, and the Firebird Suites, as well as Debussy, Clair de Lune, and Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun is the English translation of that piece. And as you can see, the conductor is Leopold Stokowski. Now, all you cartoon fans out there, will probably know him from Looney Tunes, Leopold, you know what I'm talking about. And also in Fantasia, he was the conductor in that as well. So I thought this was interesting because of on the jewel case, this is called this portion which houses the CD, or houses or supports the CD, is the red color. I thought that was cool. I don't usually see that. Of course, they're usually black, and then later in the 90s, they came out with a clear one. Yeah, so I like something a bit different. It appeals to me. So that's the first one. U.S. pressing of that CD. And next, I've got I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing this this composer, but Kodai. I think I've heard someone say it, Kodai, maybe. I think I recall that. Anyway, it's the Harry Janos suite. Pronunciation again, excuse me. So this is on the Chandos label, a British label, and a British pressing as well. And here you can see the standard from the 80s anyway, the black tray in the jewel case there. Now I do quite like this composer. He was kind of an associate of Bartók. I like that period of music from, like, say, the 1890s up until the 1930s. Kind of my favorite period for the classical music, I would say. Okay, so the next compact disc I have here is Julian Bream, guitarist, playing the music of Granados and Albanese. You'll recognize those names from earlier on my Spain cassette. España, I guess it was called. Had works by those composers as well. Now this is an RCA Red Seal CD, and interesting to note, this is very early CD from 1983. I believe that's the first year that CDs came out, and although this is a U.S. Label, the CD and the packaging is manufactured in Japan, which, as you know, was with Sony, was one of the areas where they developed the compact disc. Sony in association with Philips in the Netherlands. So I believe early on, a lot of the CDs, even for other markets, were manufactured in Japan. So something interesting to note. Yeah. Okay, next I've got another CD here. This is Peter and the Wolf, and I'm sure you recognize that visage there. That is Patrick Stewart from Star Trek. He's the narrator of this work by Prokofiev. This is, I believe, a French pressing. It's on the Erato label, which is a French label. Actually, it's made in Germany for the French label Erato. Pretty interesting. I don't know if you can see up close, but one thing about this particular CD is it's got the Warner label kind of etched into the plastic there. I don't know if you can see that, but I love little details like that, something to make the packaging a little bit different than your standard CD. This one dates from 1994. Okay, so the next CD in my hashtag haul here. Now, I'm sure you now recognize the motif there of the rectangle with the text inside. Deutsche Gramophone's Hallmark. Standard kind of, I don't want to say generic, that's kind of derogatory kind of a term, but how would you say? It's kind of their not their calling card. What's the word that I'm trying to come up with? Kind of their signature look for their a lot of their releases. They have this motif on the front. Now this one is again, pronunciation. Forgive me. Samson, the Organ Symphony Number 3. Also Ducasse, his Sorcerer's Apprentice, is on this one as well. Again, I really love the Deutsche Grammophon aesthetic. Lovely contrast between the silver and the yellow, I would say. Now, you might remember in my previous video I did a bit of a discussion about Peter Saville, who was a graphic designer in the late 70s, early 80s. And I do believe for some of his labels, the physical label, he was inspired by the Deutsche Grammophon format on the LPs. Now, later on, I will show you that I have some vinyl records on the Deutsche Grammophon label as well, so I'll point that out later. I just want to point it out now before I forgot. So that's that CD. Okay, and the last CD in my haul is this one. Also, you'll notice the logo here, RCA, from that early CD by Julian Bream. Now, same label, and then also this is also a recording of guitar music, as the previous RCA one was as well. This, however, instead of being Spanish works, more late 19th century works. These are Baroque, I believe. Vivaldi, I know, is Baroque. Carulli and Giuliani, I believe they're all Baroque composers, but don't quote me on that. Now, I have heard some of these works, but I have not heard the Vivaldi guitar concerto. Guitarist, as you can see, Kazuhito Yamashita. Oh, interesting. The chamber orchestra of Leos Janáček. I'm not sure on the pronunciation there again, but the composer Janáček is one of my favorites as well, right from that period that I really like, early 20th century. Now, this one, however, is a bit later than the other RCA CD, when they had started to actually manufacture them in the States. Early ones made in Japan, and then eventually, once they had the factories and the plants set up, they would generally manufacture the CDs in the country that they were going to be sold in. Why don't we compare the label between these two? See if there's much of a difference in the 4 years since the launch of the format. So I hope that's coming into the camera there. So no real change in the label on the CD in those 4 years since the launch of the compact disc format. All right, so that concludes the compact disc portion of my haul. So let's move on to the next format, which is classic vinyl record, probably the most popular part of the video, I believe, will be this part. So as you can see, this is another Deutsche Grammophon release, but instead on the LP format. So I don't know if it shows up quite well on the camera, but this has actually got kind of a silver foil jacket, which is printed and gives kind of a metallic look to it, which is quite cool. Now, interesting to note, this is still in the shrink wrap. Was a direct factory import from Germany. When it was purchased here, I'd probably say this is the late 70s. Doesn't really say on the record itself. Let's take a look at the inside. Oh, I see a 77 there, so I'm assuming that's the year it was released, or printed, pressed. Now, I did mention before about the label of the Deutsche Grammophon LPs, which were inspirational for Peter Saville in his early labels for Joy Division is what I'm thinking of. So if you want to take a look at that, that's where that kind of motif, I guess this long rectangle, wide rectangle in the center specifically, and then the text running around there. Quite tasteful label design. Okay, so the next LP in my haul here, I've got Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but this one was Swan Lake, Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake, and Sleeping Beauty suites. Now, this one is the complete ballet of Swan Lake. This one is a Vanguard Everyman Classics record. I have a couple other records on that label. Not a lot, though. As you can see, this is a nice gatefold cover on there. And I believe this is a Canadian pressing. Or no, maybe it's US and then imported into Canada by London Records there. Okay, next, now we have another Deutsche Grammophon record. As I said earlier, they don't always have that format with the large rectangle in the top portion of the sleeve. Here is an example of when they went away from that. So this one is Ravel, a few works of his, and then Debussy as well. So just has the Deutsche Grammophon logo at the top, different than their usual aesthetic format. Now, nice picture of the orchestra there on the back, Orchestra of Paris, and gatefold sleeve like the last one. Quite lovely. And I believe this is made in France. Usually Deutsche Grammophon, as you know, it's a German label, and they're usually manufactured in Germany. Yeah, so this one, it's the text is in French around the edge, slightly different label, dated 1982 and made in France. So that's that one. Okay, so next in my selection of LPs. I've got Mozart's flute concertos. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Mozart. I haven't heard a lot of his stuff, but what I have heard, it was kind of, to me, I found it kind of boring, conventional, kind of, to me anyway. And of course, this is in a few hundred years hindsight. I'm sure when he came out, it was quite interesting and revolutionary and what have you. But for me, in the 21st century, looking back, it just doesn't do a lot for me, I have to say. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion, but may be wrong. I'm not an expert on classical music or anything, but just personal taste. I prefer the stuff from late 19th, early 20th centuries. So I did decide to pick this up because, I don't know if you can see there, but it's actually sealed still. So this has never been listened to. I thought that was pretty cool. And this is an English pressing, made in Britain. EMI, His Master's Voice, is the label there. Dated 1981, mastered at Abbey Road Studios. Some interesting info there. That one. Okay, next, again, Mozart. Symphonies 41 and 31. Philips label, made in the Netherlands, as you can see, imported from Europe there. Yeah, I just thought I'd buy this just because it was in really nice condition, and I quite like the cover on there. Quite cool, quite cool. Beautiful condition. Okay, again, another Deutsche Grammophon LP, this time with your standard kind of aesthetic going on, standard graphic format, I should say. Rodrigo, I mentioned him earlier, Concerto de Aranjuez and Fantasia para un gentilhombre. Excuse my pronunciation there. I'm a bit better with Spanish than some of the other languages or the other nationalities' names. So this one, these are works for guitar and orchestra. Narciso Yepes, famous guitarist. Let you see the back there. And then this is one of the classic standard Deutsche Grammophon records made in Germany. Quite beautiful, I really love them. Deutsche Grammophon Gesellschaft. I think some of the earlier records would include the Gesellschaft on there. The later ones, late 70s and 80s, they didn't have that. So maybe this is from the late 60s or something like that. See if it says in the run-out groove. Yeah, actually, yeah, this is from 1969, so just little things you notice. So slightly different, but a similar aesthetic as my other ones. Okay, so next we've got more Spanish music. De Falla again, El Amor Brujo, which is a great piece of music. I don't know if you'd call it a suite, but it's a group of shorter works. It means Love the Magician is what it's usually translated as. It has some instrumental portions, some with a vocalist. It's a really great bit of music if you want to check that out. Now this, I've never seen this record label before, Longanesi Periodici. It's an Italian pressing, an Italian label, I'm assuming. Quite a cool package here. It's got a multi-page booklet talking about the soloist there, Leopold Stokowski. He was the conductor for this particular performance. And then at the back there, the record in its protective sleeve. So quite a lovely little package, and I've never seen this label or series before, so I thought I'd grab that, and I do love the music. Okay, next we've got Vaughan Williams, English composer. I don't believe I've heard any of his music before, but the record was in great shape. Angel Digital. These, I know digital is kind of anathema these days, but I do find that I have a few of these Angel Digital records, and they sound quite lovely. Very nice, quiet pressings, and the recordings, to me, they sound excellent. So got that mainly because it was in such nice shape, and I wanted to give him a try. I think he's from the early 20th century. Yeah, I believe so. So we'll see. Generally, you don't really... England, I don't think, is known for its composers, but let's give it a shot. Okay, next. This is another label that I'm not familiar with. Synchro Concert Hall. Looks like it might be kind of like a discount, a cheaper label. English, as you can see, this kind of English style of sleeve with the folded over tabs on the back. So it's some Russian pieces, Rimsky-Korsakov, Borodin, Mussorgsky. See what that's like. Quite like the cover on there, and like I say, I've never seen this label, so I thought I'd pick it up and put it in the collection. Okay, and lastly, we've got the soundtrack for Exodus, the Otto Preminger picture. This, I've seen the movie, it was quite good. Has Paul Newman in it, I believe. Kind of in the classical music vein, the soundtrack to this film, so thought I'd include that. What I did want to... Basically, why I did pick this up was mainly for the beautiful Saul Bass cover on there. If you're not aware of him, he did posters for several famous films: Alfred Hitchcock, Vertigo, some other ones for this composer, Man with the Golden Arm. No, some other movies for this director. What was it? Anatomy of a Murder, for example. Great stylish graphic designer. Alright, so that's the last record. Alright, so that was my classical music #thrifting haul, multiple format haul. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, I know I have to say it all the time. I don't know why people just don't do it on their own, but I guess it's what you got to do in this business. So please like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, share, comment, stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. So let me know if you want more videos like this. I'm sure I personally find my videos very entertaining, interesting to watch, great works of art in their own right, if I can say so myself. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next later. Love.